Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode where we are delving into the game model and how can you build your game model. Today, after we spoke about the defensive organization, we're going to speak about the offensive organization. There's a key element that differentiates one from the other, which is the football. Of course, if you are playing offensively, you're going to have that key element that is the football, which brings not only an element of complexity, but also it brings density to all the information that the players now need to think when they are playing football. So the principles of play, they become more important when we are speaking about the offensive organization, because of course you're going to have the ball, you're going to put pressure into your players, into the decision making process, and it's your job to try to make it easy as possible. But then that will probably take longer, and this is where when I spoke to you about age, gender, they become very relevant, because their perception will be different. Not only the age and the gender, but also their ability. If they are more able to play football, is because they are smarter, they take better decisions, and of course that brings success to their actions, and therefore they are more motivated to learn more, increase their quality, and then of course improve as a whole football player. So principles of play. What are the principles of play that we can discuss when we are talking about offensive organization? You might be using the 5 corridors or 4 corridors, depending on the methodology that you have and the way you see football. But most likely, we're talking about using not only as wide as you can be, so that you are also creating more spaces within the defensive line, because you are forcing them to be wide open, because your players are there. So if they are marking individually, they will probably try to match whatever the positions and the spaces that you are using. So you're trying to use that width so that you can, of course, play within the channels. And then not only the width, but also the depth. So you want to create that. And if you go back on my blog, I've once talked about the counter movements theory that I was always speaking when I was coaching. Because of course the counter movements create that balance that the defensive line is trying to achieve, way more challenging, because of course they are forced within the movements of your players to be up and down, going sideways. So therefore the spaces within the channels, within the defensive lines, they will show up. And that's where you can take advantage, because another principle might be finding the free player. Normally we know that in theory, unless everyone is marking individually, and even so, the goalkeeper will not mark anyone. So you know that in theory, you're going to always have one extra or two extra players on the field, especially on the build-up, because most likely the other defenders will either leave 4 or 5 players. Even if it's 5 and they can take one of the wing backs to go and mark someone a little bit more up on the field, they will leave 4 players. So that means that if they leave 4, then they have a goalkeeper behind. The maximum they can press is with 6 players to achieve the 11. So if you think football like this, and this is why I've always told you, segment the parts. Just clearly understand what you want from the first third to the second third, and then to the final third. Or you can even think about the half. How are you going to achieve to reach the halfway in a way that you have superiority and you have control of the football? So the principles of the play, they play a major role here, regardless of whatever you are deciding. But you're probably gonna end up speaking about these elements that I've spoke to you. And then you need to define multiple options, different scenarios. If they are pressing with 2 players, if they are pressing with one striker, but then 2 wingers that are trying to create difficulties into your line of defensive line, regardless if it's the right back or left back or even the center backs. Whereas one of the pressing options that I gave you on the last episode, I was pressing with one striker, but then the winger was coming to press also the second center back, so that the ball can never pass from one to the other and had to go back to the goal kick and then you come back. So those are different scenarios that you need to try, you need to experiment. And then of course the biggest challenge is always to how you're going to integrate your vision of how you want to play into the training sessions. So when I was a coach, most of the times I was even overloading the areas like midfield. I was overloading normally. Of course, as I told you, you're gonna have 4 defenders, so I will create a scenario. They will only have 6, but I was creating a 7th player that will come in, or I was overloading specific areas where they knew that in the match they were probably gonna have more space, but I want them to execute even with scenarios that were more difficult because they will have more players there. It was a crowded area. I want them to experiment the frustration for them then to understand the scenarios. So I was basically um, creating more difficulties so that they can, of course, face them into like challenging obstacles that they were surpassing. And then of course when they were getting to the match, because the match wasn't bringing the same number of players in the areas, but it was bringing, the excitement, the stress into their decision making, and that plays a decisive role on their decision making and their actions as well in the matches. If of course they are pressed, what are the options? So these kind of scenarios, they are very good for a coach to bring their coaching points to the sessions. So I'll give you an example. If they are pressing high, what are the options available? So one of the things that I was doing when I was a coach, I was creating a space, an area from where the defensive players, like the center backs, they could start doing diagonals. Because below that area or after that area, I would guess that the success rate they will have into making long passes will be less relevant. And therefore, if it's not relevant and it's not adding value to our way of play, why are we doing that? So we are creating an area, and from that area, they could play the long ball, the long pass, but below that area, I didn't want that kind of passes. Again, if the ball they are pressing high and the ball needs to go back to the goalkeeper, where is the goalkeeper position? And therefore, afterwards they get that ball. What is the passing options? What are they looking for? So they creating this kind of player like play repetitions. They already know that we normally we say their eyes are closed, so they can almost play if they are, even if they were blind, um, because they know the positions that each player is going to occupy. So it becomes very easy. In this kind of scenario, I'm going to do this. In this kind of scenario, I'm going to do that. So it becomes automatic for them, and that's where you see that your game model starts to gain expressions. And after that is individual expressions that will develop your game model. Opponents creating more difficulties because then they get used to the way that you play. So this is very challenging, but this is where your game model is going to evolve. And this is why game models, they are never closed, they are always an open canvas. Then of course, if you are supposed to get the ball, so understanding your profiles, the number, the qualities, and of course the less ability players or the more ability players, who do you want to guide your game? This is very relevant. Sometimes when you see coaches playing with 3 defenders, some of them they'll create, or if you want to do even not with 3 defenders, but you want to do a build up in a 3-4-3 system or a 3-5-2, regardless. But you have that line of 3. There's always nuances within this line of 3. You might be the center midfielder because you play in the original 4-3-3 formation. You might be the center midfielder that comes and joins the 2 center backs, and now the 2 center backs are open, and you have center backs as a right center back, left center back, and then the midfielder drops as the main center back, the third one that sits on the center, or this one might sit on the side. Or you even want to create that line of 3. There's a coach here in Portugal. He's now the head coach of the under-21s national team, and he used to play defensively in a 4-4-2 formation, but then attacking in a more agile 3-4-3 formation, where one of the right back or the center or the left back when he's playing in a 4-4-2 formation, that player will join the line of three. So there's no involvement of the center midfielders. But then he was creating a line of three with the original right back, right center back, and then left center back. This is where once the game model is so clear to you, you know exactly what the kind of profiles that will add value into specific positions. The Having the left back as a left footer is very important, and we spoke about this on the defensive organization. If you know that the left center back is a right footed, the number of options will be very limited. So understanding these kind of details of your game model, they will only add value once then you are deciding about the profile of player that you want for that specific position. And this only, we are getting layers of detail that will only provide and add value to the game model that the coach will have based on the foundations that the club has. Because if, and this is why the game model is so important for a club to have an idea. Of course, it's not a detailed idea as I'm mentioning now, because then each coach, you want them to also come and add their value, but they will come on the foundation of something. They will come on based on some grounds. And of course, if you have these, you're not going to select all the coaches to come and work for you, but you're going to select some of them that will, you can see that merging their ideas with your idea as a club, as an institution, the result will be much greater. So this is only to give you ideas. Of course, there's more layers, there's more details that we can add to these. I will now delve into what I used to do, and I'll give you some examples of the things that I was doing, and then we'll take the discussion from there.
Okay, so we just spoke about the principles of play. Here you see, again, this is old, so this is from 9 or 10 seasons ago. Most likely, I would probably adapt some of these things and some of the principles of play, some of the ways of playing that I wanted to implement. But this is, again, just to give you food for thought. My principles of play was, of course, the attitude. We wanted to have a positive attitude, meaning that I wanted the ball as many time in the game as possible, as much time as possible. I want passing lines. I want the ball on our side. I want us to use the space and have a space awareness in a way that was an advantage for us. I want us to press, cover, and anticipate scenarios that the clubs, the situation of the game were proposing to us. So here you can see these are the principles of play that I want them to be installed within all the elements of the team. When we are talking about a build up in the 3-4-3 formation, I want them to have options and options and options and options, and also to have confidence. The ball needs to be on our side, and they need to be confident enough to have the courage also to face, pressing situations, because that will happen. The match here, or the situation that I was proposing here, the ball goes from the goal kick. The other team is pressing in a 4-4-2 formation. Actually, it's a 4-1-3-2. But for all the scenarios, I wanted our line of three to be there whenever the other team was pressing with two attackers. So we were playing a lot with what the opposition was bringing. If they only have one striker, it doesn't make sense for me to have three defenders or three players against one. Two should be enough to deal with that situation. So here again, if we are with three, that means that the opposition was with two attackers or two pressing players. Then there was three movements that were very important. The first one was within the midfield. So because in my way of my perception of the game, everyone, of course, is looking for the key element, which is the football. Therefore, if they are focusing on the football, because there's only one in the match, most likely the ones that are on the opposite side of where the ball is being played, they have the advantage of finding the pockets, finding the spaces between the lines. And then those pocket spaces will be the ones that we could take advantage. So you can see the two midfielders is the one that comes from behind. So the one that is opposite where the ball is being played that can provide that option. And then we have the right back providing depth Why? Because there's no pressure on that player. So the element of pressure was very important here. If there's no pressure, we have the space to enjoy them. If there's pressure, of course, we need to get close and support the player with the ball. Three options: right, left, and center. This is a principle of play that should be there all the time. And then we have different passing options. Again, the diagonal was not a pass that I wanted, especially when a player has no pressure on him or her. But there was an option, of course. So different options, different ways of playing, that the different decisions that they could take. Then again, these two players are key. Once the ball is in the center, they should then go back to their original positions. And then again, the options and finding those pockets, they should be the responsibility of the original wingers that were now playing as fake attacking midfielders, or whatever you want to call them, but inverted wingers. They were playing in those pockets. They were trying on one side to get the left back and the right back of the oppositions, paying attention to them, getting confused because then again our wing backs, they were coming as well. So where they are going to decide, are they going to be inside and marking our wingers, or are they going to the wings and marking our wing backs? So these decisions they had to make, and this is the challenge that I was trying to promote here. Creating, of course, again, the lines, they need to be occupying the lines, providing full width within our match, and then that will be the end of it. Then, if it's a goal kick, and of course within the 3-4-3, we want maximum depth, maximum width as well. Finding the free man first and second ball. So in case there's a goal kick, the position of the two wingers was very, very important. They should come inside, providing the width to the wing backs. We have three options to play. The second element was to force the ball to go to the wing back. So this was an information that was very important for the goalkeepers. As a third option, we could always go to the inside. Why targeting the wingers? Most likely, they will not be the most stronger players in the air, so they will not win a lot of aerial duels. But if the ball goes there, I guarantee that I have cover not only from the center midfielders, but also from the wing back on of that side, regardless if the ball goes to the right or left. And then, in case the ball surpasses, I could also have that element of depth with the striker, if in case we win the ball. This area was very relevant for the second ball, and this is where I wanted to finalize this video, because again, here is where your game understanding, your detail needs to be providing as a coach. The club most likely will not have this, but it's important for even the scouting department, the recruitment. If they have an idea, a basic idea, a generic idea of what your game model is going to be and what you are trying to implement, you want to build up from the back, but then you're also providing options in case we need to go a little bit further and play a long ball. The kind of profile of the players they are looking for becomes much more detailed and oriented into what you want in the club. Because as a club, you have a strategy of selling these kind of profiles or that kind of profiles. And then therefore, the kind of coaches that you're going to bring to the table are coaches that have ability to envision what you are implementing. So again, alignment, having a generic foundation for the coaches then to come and provide a detailed orientation for the game model and the way of playing of your team.
As a closure for the episode, I just wanted to give you, a disclaimer. Basically, it's a disclaimer because we all know that there are different elements, different eyes see football in different ways. So there are different elements that you can always add to this. My job here is only to set, again, the foundations for one side, the clubs to understand that their role is decisive when we are thinking about foundations of the game model. It doesn't have to be as detailed as the coach's perception of the game model, and this is the second side of things. So coaches on one side providing the detailed orientation of their game model, but then clubs, they need to have a foundation. And then once you merge both, that's where of course you want the results to come. So as a disclaimer, most likely there will be way more things that we could speak about game model here, about offensive model, about defensive model, about the transitions that will come now. However, I want just to provide the foundations, and after this, I just want you to think about whatever questions I'm doing, whatever processes I'm developing, whatever principles of play. For me, one is very important, which I just want you to find the free man. After that, that one is free to go ahead. But this is my vision of football. It doesn't necessarily means that is the right one, or it has to be the same as yours. So my job here is just to make questions, make you think about that, and once you do that, that means that you have more answers. Your game model develop, and my job is done. Enjoy this one, and the coming ones will be on transitions, offensive and defensive, and then we'll take it from there to the rest of the series. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one.